Oh, good evening and welcome to the inaugural Money Smart for Small Business session, sponsored by Community Trust Bank. My name is Tyrone Tyra. I am the Senior Vice President for Community and Minority Business Development here at Commerce Lexington, your local Chamber of Commerce. Tonight's class will cover the topics of, is owning a business a good fit for you, and planning for a healthy business. We have a great instructor to whom I will introduce to all of you in a few minutes. But first, I would like to recognize Larry Jones, Regional President for Community Trust Bank. Larry came to us several weeks ago and asked if we would put together something for small and minority businesses here in Lexington and Central Kentucky. With their help, we came up with the Money Smart program. Community Trust Bank has been a great partner for my program and a champion for small business for my whole 15 years, and I'm sure longer. But for all the 15 years I've been here at Commerce Lexington, they have been some of the first to step forward, to look outside of the box for startup businesses, and to help existing businesses grow with programs like their contract lending program, which I think for about 10 years, nobody else was doing but Community Trust Bank. They were helping small businesses leverage opportunities and get access to capital. Larry, I want to thank you for attending tonight. And if you'd like to say a few words to the group, sir.
Yes, I would. Tyrone and the group, Community Trust Bank is very proud to be sponsoring this. And like you, Tyrone, I've been around and working with small business development centers and doing programs for many years. Looking forward to this program. I just throw in kind of 3 points you can think about tonight for your small business. First is have a good plan, know what you want to do, put it down, be ready to go. Number 2, it takes money. So if you have 15% of what you need in money, then you more than likely can borrow the other 85%, and then you're on the road. And number 3, pay your bills. In this world today, having a good credit score is important and helps you to get that business kick-started. So with that, I'm looking forward to being a participant in all of this. And thank you, Tyrone. Thanks a bunch.
Oh, you're welcome, sir. I really appreciate Community Trust Bank and you especially stepping up for this. Again, thinking out of the box and thinking, what do small businesses need, especially in the year of a pandemic? We all have to think beyond ourselves. And I think that Community Trust Bank has done that with the starting of this program. Again, this is the first session. But the one thing that I will tell you is that we have one instructor for all of who signed on for all the sessions, and I would like to introduce Shawn Rogers to the group now. Shawn Rogers is the owner of Ascend Business Consulting LLC, and she has a passion for helping small business owners succeed. She believes that knowledge is power. Shawn has 17 plus years of experience in small business and economic development. And her idea is to arm small businesses with the resources for success. Through her career, she has advised hundreds of entrepreneurs and small business owners from all stages of business and across many industries. Shawn's area of expertise is business planning and assistance with access to capital and an emphasis on federal government enhancements such as SBA 7A and 504 loan programs. I can tell you that I've worked with Shawn for double-digit years, and she's one of the most capable people that I've ever worked with. And if you look at many of the businesses that we put on the street, Shawn's hands have touched them. So I am happy to introduce to all of you Shawn Rogers tonight.
Tyrone, thank you for the introduction. And I want to thank you and Larry for making this training possible. I truly do believe that knowledge is power, and I'm just so excited to be part of this and to have the opportunity to share this information with you guys, and that we can learn together as we go through this 9-part training series. And the curriculum that we're going to be using was developed jointly by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or FDIC, and the Small Business Administration. So I feel like those are two great partners to come together to create some pretty fantastic curriculum, and I look forward to sharing that with you. So our overarching intention with doing this series is really to let you know that you are not alone. You absolutely have a community in your business to feel that encouragement and support that is around you and available to you. And our goal really is to arm you with information. We want to empower you, to provide tools and resources, and to offer you connections that will enhance what you've already been doing. You're doing a great job of operating your business, or you have the idea about starting a business, and we just want you to know that there are a lot of resources that you can tap into. And so tonight, what we're going to be doing is kind of looking ahead to the future, and we already have a date for the second session of this series, which will be Tuesday, January the 19th. So I'll share that with you again as we wrap up, but just want you to know, as we're looking ahead into the future topics, we're going to cover everything from banking services to talking about the traditional organizational types, whether you want to be an LLC or an S corporation. What does all of that mean? And as you look through the list, we're talking about strong business credit. And as Larry mentioned when we started, the importance of business credit. So we're going to touch on that. We're going to talk about risk management, talk about tax planning, and then finally, the most important, one of the huge topics is managing cash flow. I think cash is king, and we want to go over and share that information with you about cash flow management. So that's kind of looking ahead. What does that 9-part series look like? That's kind of touching on what the topics that we're going to be covering. So initially, we are going to be using Zoom to deliver the training. Our hope, though, is that as the pandemic eases, as the vaccinations get into circulation, as we start to emerge from this pandemic, that we're going to be able to do this in person, to have an in-person offering to complement what we're doing through Zoom. So that's our hope, is to really that becomes a possibility. And so a couple of ground rules, though, that I want to lay for everyone is just to say that we're going to learn through each other throughout this process. We invite you to ask questions. Tonight, we're going to be utilizing the chat feature of Zoom. So Katie is monitoring the chat for us. And so if you have questions, just, feel free to use the chat, and I'll answer those as we go along. And then I want to leave time at the end to go over any questions that you may have as well. So just, we want this to be a good, good use of your time. We want you to feel free to ask those questions, and so that we can have conversations around some of these topics as well. And so also, Tyrone shared with you guys an electronic and email version of the participant guide. So for each one of these sessions or modules that we're covering, you will have a participant guide that goes along as a companion to this training. So what we're doing, we want to be very mindful of time, and we really appreciate that you're with us tonight. And so to be mindful of your time, what we've done is we're customizing each session, and we're pulling out what we think are really kind of the key meaty topics. And with those topics from the guide, but you have that participants guide that you can use whenever after the meeting. So you'll be able to dig into that, to check out additional information from there. So after our time together, you'll definitely want to spend a little bit of time reviewing the guide and exploring the additional information. There's a lot of really good resources in there. And so, but as I said, if you have questions tonight, please, just use the chat feature. Let me know what questions you have, and we'll go ahead and jump right into it. And I'll just ask right off the gate, does anyone have any questions before we dig into the topic?
No.
Not hearing any. Yes, ma'am. So not hearing anything, I'm going to go right ahead and get into our objective for tonight. This is a combination of two sessions. So for tonight's session, you receive 2 participants guide. The first part of the session is really talking about, is being in business a good fit? And so I feel like the areas that I want to touch on tonight are the self-assessment pieces. I think that that's really some good, helpful information. And then also an action plan to give you some insight into their thoughts around creating an action plan. So those are the two objectives that we're going to look for as we go through the first session, and we'll just jump right into that. So with thinking about all of us individually, everyone has strengths and self-assessment. And it's a tool that really helps you identify competencies that may require development. It also lets you leverage your strengths in order to strengthen any weaknesses that you may have or weak competencies through education, partnering, asking for advice, and so on. So what we want to do is think about a tree and think about the foundation of a tree, and that even a small tree has to develop a good, healthy root system and before it can bear any fruit. And so this graphic depicts the 4 roots of power, which are people, sales, financial, and self-discipline. And so when we think about the people power, that really is, as you think about yourself individually, it really has to do with your ability to influence others. That could be partners, bankers, customers. So think about your sphere of influence, and with that people power, it's people who rate themselves high in this area tend to be likable, they're easygoing, and it's really easy for them to attract and keep customers. So as you think about the people power, those are the areas that we're looking at. So as we move over to sales power, the roots refer to setting and attaining sales goals. And it could be, people with sales power, they know how to sell, they sell all the time, and they're just very strong in this area. And they have no problem closing the sale either. So this is a very strong area for them. And they're not shy about going to meetings. You're going to see them networking at events. They're going to be talking to new people. They never meet a stranger. And they're very confident. If a person has sales, those are related to that root of power. So when it comes to financial power, those roots refer to securing and managing money. As Larry indicated when we first opened up this evening about the importance of planning. So folks who have real strength in financial power are people who rate themselves, they balance their checkbooks, they might use Excel or QuickBooks or some type of other financial management tool. So they want to be, if they work with an accountant, if the accountant might use some terminology that they're not familiar with, they're going to ask questions, they're going to continually expand their vocabulary. So they're very tuned into anything financially related to their business. They know their personal credit scores, and they have strategies to improve those credit scores. So the financial roots of power, those are the attributes around that. And on the self-discipline power, that really determines how well you manage your time, what types of habits that you have, and also how you manage your energy. And so as a person with strong self-discipline, they tend to work even when they've not had enough sleep. And we all know, being a small business owner, you wear many hats. Sometimes you work nights, weekends. You are the jack of all trades for the small business. So strong self-discipline really helps when it comes to that. They are also willing to make sacrifices for and understand that, that they need to funnel resources to help grow their business. So that as you think about self-discipline power, all 4 of those together really comprise the roots of power. And so you'll have strengths in some areas, you may have weaknesses in others. So what we want to think about is, what are your roots of power? And so this is where I'm going to point to your participant guide, pages 10 through 13 of that guide, really give you some good information and ask a series of questions where you can reflect on each one of those areas. And it lets you, through those 40 competencies, it lets you, kind of rate yourself, and it kind of gives you an idea of where your strengths and weaknesses will lie. And so we encourage you, after, tonight's session, if you have some time, check out that self-assessment. And it's always a good idea also to ask folks for feedback, just to get some feedback, because you're probably going to hear they're going to share with you probably strengths that you didn't know you have. And so it'll be very enlightening for you to kind of get that validation from someone that's close to you or that's considered a stakeholder for your business. And so also when you think about, a self-assessment, identifying areas of strength and areas of weakness, one other thing I want to share is that it's okay to ask for help. It's always okay to ask for help. And so asking for advice and feedback, lets you reflect on areas, but places that you can get that type of feedback are naturally family and friends. Also potential customers are another great source of feedback, bankers as well. And, also potential partners or other business owners. So there's definitely some areas that you can get feedback, whether that's you're getting advice from someone within your network, or it could be that you might be paying for advice too, maybe from a CPA or another financial professional. So there are a lot of areas that you can get advice, but the key thing is don't be afraid to ask for advice and don't be afraid to look for that, because that really can help you in the long run. And, I also want to share, no business owner goes into business without making mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. The key thing is you learn from the mistakes and you keep going forward. And they also ask for help. So just don't feel like if you've had a rough at bat or if you're having challenges, do not let that get you down. Everyone goes through bumps in the road. So it's reaching out to others, asking for help, getting some direction and encouragement can go a long way towards helping kind of identify what's going on and kind of look at a plan forward. And so that's some thoughts about assessments I thought would be helpful for you guys to look at. As we look at the assessments and think about asking for professional help and getting some validation on that, I think one thing we want to think about is to do an action plan. And on page 14 of the participant guide, there is a start, stop, continue action plan. So as you are getting your feedback from the folks that we just talked about, you're going to start to reflect on this information that you're receiving. And you have an assessment where you've gathered some information, you've talked to others to kind of validate that information. So that's going to let you think about, okay, there might be some things that you need to start doing, so getting some input on those things can give you some ideas about where you need to start putting some energy or effort into it. You also might find out about some things you need to stop doing. And so one of those things would be maybe, realizing you can't do it all alone, you might need some help. And so as you think about the self-assessment, you get that feedback, there are some things you're going to want to start doing, some things you're going to want to stop doing, and then there are going to be some things you probably want to continue doing. And so and we welcome you back to continue to join us on this journey with these modules in the Money Smart series. So we hope that you continue with us on this journey that we've started tonight. So as you think about that action plan, that assessment gives you some good foundational information. You get that validation, feedback from others, and then you create that action plan. Let you know, what is it you want to start? What do you need to stop? And what do you want to continue? And so those are some things some seeds we want to plant tonight as you think about your business. I really do like this industry specific self-assessment that they have in the participant guide. And what's really great about that is they have taken core competencies from different industries, and they've given you insight into, okay, for construction, for example, how are you with bidding and estimating? So it's going to ask you to evaluate yourself, and that's so important to that industry. If you're in retail, customer service. So for each one of these industries, it's going to give you some insight into what are the core competencies within each one of those industries. And so that's some very great information and really to look at that objectively with yourself to say there might be some opportunity for improvement there, or let you know some areas that you might need to strengthen, or you might already have strength in those areas. And so if you're in a business or industry that isn't on the list, there's a lot of research that you can do, or there's some research you can do into your industry to find out what are those competencies for your particular industry. And that's where I point to, a mentor, whether that be a SCORE mentor or an SBDC person, can help you get that market research that you need to understand what is going on in your industry and what those areas of core competency are that are important for your particular industry. And so I'm a big fan of what they did with the industry specific self-assessments. That was some very good info there. And so as you think about that homework, check that out and see what you think about that. So as we bring everything together, kind of the key points that I would want to share with you for this particular session are really around, you know, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, and that you recognize where you're strong and find out what areas need development. And then from there, having a clear plan forward is also very helpful. And then asking for, you know, having that kind of advisory folks in your life that can give you some feedback, whether those are family members, friends, colleagues, accountants, bankers, other business owners. It's really good to have those folks surround you that can give you that advice and that insight. And then also, I can't stress enough to you to develop a relationship with your banker. And really and truly start conversations with them, let them get to know you and your business long before you ever need a loan. You want to get their insight. They can help you understand. And this would be the key takeaways that I would point to that really resonated with me as you know, preparing for the class and my time together with you guys this evening. And so, so with that, what we want to do is just, you know, for more information, and just want to point out to you, page 18 of the resource guide has excellent tools and resources. So as you get to know me, you're going to find out I'm a bootstrapper. So I'm going to tell you every free or low cost thing that I know to get market research or any other type of information. And so I really was impressed with the information that they provided. And then we're going to supplement that as well to make sure you have information about the local resources available to you. So that'll be a follow-up item that you'll be receiving from us, that information about those local resources. And so, so that's, as we think about the good fit question, you know, you know, those are the things we want to think about that I touched on this evening. And so if owning a business is a good fit or not, those assessments, those action plans, developing those relationships, those are all great resources and tools that you can utilize to help you explore and evaluate if, you know, if it's a good fit being in business. And so we're going to springboard from that into the planning phase for business. And we're going to talk about planning for a healthy business. And as we think about planning, our learning objectives for this section are really planning. What we're going to do is I'm going to introduce you to a person, Sophia, and we're going to walk through the journey that she took to start her business and share with you that 2-year journey that she went on, what that was like for her and what the milestones were for her and the processes that she went through. And so we're going to, you know, through her experience, look at how the planning continued to evolve as she developed her concept. We're going to talk about how she created a resource plan. And so you'll see that she did a lot of planning. She had to make some personal sacrifices because there were some things she needed to work on. Like a lot of us have things we need to work on. So she had to make some sacrifices. And we shared earlier that that takes self-discipline. So we know for her to make those sacrifices, she has a lot of self-discipline. And then also, so we're going to look at her experience and reflect on the different aspects of planning for a business. And so a little bit about Sophia. And so, so with Sophia, she's a mother of 2 teenagers. And so you can imagine she's probably kept pretty busy by those 2 teenagers. And she has to start appliances. So not only cell phones, but also small appliances. So her sons and a few friends all think that this is a great idea to make a plan. What she needs to figure out is how much money this is going to take and how she's going to finance or pay for the startup of her business. And for the process. And so we're going to watch her journey and look at and answer specific questions. And so we're going to watch as she makes progress and look at the journey she takes. And this is a 2-year journey. And so as we go through that, it's going to take her a little bit of time before she quits that day job and works full time in the business. We're going to see that doesn't happen right away. And then also we're going to, reflect on the steps that she's taken and look at that to transfer over to maybe where you are in the planning process, to see if there's any parallels between the steps that she took on her journey and the journey. So journey. And so to do, we want to think about, there's a planning stage self-assessment that you, where you're at in the planning process, and then there are no wrong answers is the key thing. So that assessment for planning lets you objectively look at where you're at, and also lets you know kind of where you're at in the process, and also where you need to go, the direction that you need to go. So check out the planning assessment, and then we're going to move forward. This is when I was with the Development Center, I worked with different businesses, did a lot of business planning with folks. And one of the things that I business plan, and they were like very overwhelmed by the idea of doing a business plan. And so I would relay to them, hey, we're going to do this in chunks. We're going to do this in little pieces. And so just to make it so not overwhelming. What I really like about this 4-part planning process we're looking at here is it begins on the back of a napkin, literally. And so it's what the key thing is, you have ideas. The key thing is to get ideas out of your head onto paper, even if that's a napkin, or the back of an envelope, whatever that is. Start the paper. That back of the napkin approach is going to help you get those ideas down. It'll let you kind of begin thinking about, okay, got this idea, I might need to do a little bit of research around this, and also can springboard you into the planning process. And so that would be looking at, the first step in that, the back of the napkin approach. And it evolves into looking at what type of resources that you're going to need. So you get the idea down on paper, you start looking at what resources are needed to help bring this idea to reality. And then it might evolve into a business plan. So you can see a trend here, progress. Then so as a business grows and as an idea grows, the planning just changes. The nature of the planning changes in a bit. It goes from a vague idea to becoming a more concrete reality. So what we'll do is we're going to look at Sophia's planning process and touch on that. And so I mentioned to you that it took her 2 years to get to, as you can see, she started with the back of the napkin, developed that resource plan, moved into business planning, and then came up with her action plan. And that happened over the course of 2 years. And the idea, you need to start with a small plan and have a phased approach. And that's kind of what she did. She had this idea. And so with Sophia, we'll walk through her planning process, and we're going to start with what the back of her napkin looked like. And so with the back of her napkin, she had this idea. She's like, I want to fix smartphones, tablets, and I want to do a small appliance repair. Maybe later. She said, she's thinking through getting ideas down. So she went, okay, what's my well, who is doing this, and what does the competition look like for this? So you can kind of see these ideas going around in her head, and she's getting them down onto paper just so she can start fleshing out the details to support and to develop those ideas. And so so when you look at your participant guide on page 7 is the back of Sophia's napkin. And so ideas seem vague, they might seem disorganized, it might just be, but again, that key thing is let's get it out of your head onto paper, because what I've seen happen, once you start that process, it is amazing. The channels of creativity open. You get some ideas down, you get more ideas. And so it's really like the floodgates open once you start that, even getting it on paper, on a napkin or back of an envelope. So it really is a great process, you know, just to start to get the entrepreneur. You will always have ideas. And just know that getting them down lets you start doing some research. Every idea may not be a great idea as you do a little bit of research, but you never know. And so that's what I encourage people constantly. Keep a notebook with you as you get ideas, write those ideas down, because again, it just sparks more creativity on your part. So, so as you look at the step one, you know, kind of what benefits do you want to get out of your business? You know, what size business do you need to achieve the benefits? And then, you know, start asking yourself some of these questions. Do I need to rent a location? Do I need to hire employees? So the questions just start coming up and bubbling up. And again, the participant guide has some great questions and answers, you know, that can help you kind of go through and think through some of the questions related to the stage. So we're going to move from step one, the back of the napkin, and we're going to move into more of a resource plan. So we're going to move from, and we're going to continue to look at Sophia and look to see how she's progressed. And remember, and I'll go back a few slides, the back of the napkin, you know, that lasted a short period of time, and she immediately moved into that resource plan. So we're going to look at the resource plan example. She moved right into that resource plan. So we want to look at how she refined her idea. And then she decided, you know, based upon feedback research, she decided that she's going to specialize in repairing cell phones, iPads, and tablets. And decided, you know what, later we might expand into doing those small appliance repairs. But right, you know, that's something we'll look at down the road. Right now, we're going to specialize in a certain area. Had a discovery process. So she asked some colleagues, you know, who gave her some business ideas, some advice. She went to the Women's Business Center here in Lexington. That's hosted by Community Ventures on North Broadway. So she utilized the Women's Business Center to help her think through her business model. And then took some courses in certain areas. So she took some training. And then she began the development of her resource plan. And so she wanted to look at how much money she would need to open her doors and what that's going to cost to operate the business for the first 6 months. And so at the, you know, at this stage of the game, you can have estimates, you can have ballpark estimates, and that's okay. As you drill down and do more research and refine the concept, the numbers are going to become more precise. The key thing is, though, let's start getting some idea about what this is going to launch. So there she was. We look at her estimate of a period of time. She did the research. I'm going to need some space. I'm going to need equipment and supplies. And she said roughly $18,000 should do it. She's developing her skills. She took that training I mentioned. She said, I'm going to utilize the services of an accountant and bookkeeper. So she budgeted some money for that. She put some money, she said, I'm going to need insurance, so budget for that. So that's her estimate. Now, I do want to mention when she's at this stage that this does not include living expenses. So this is solely what it is going to cost to get her business up and going. And so, as we think about expenses, getting going. And so as we think about the dollar amount that we're at here, $21,000, and she said, you know, I've got 7,000 I can put into this. And Larry shared with us, you know, 15% is what he suggested for us. And then, you know, what the rule of thumb that the curriculum suggests to us as well is that not to borrow more than 200%. Needs a raise at this point, her gap is $14,000. So she needs to come up with a plan to bring $14,000, into existence so that she can get this business up and going. And so, so as you look at Sophia, what we want you to do is think about your own resource plan and your own timeline, and think about, you know, what it is, you know, that you would need to develop if you're starting a business. You're on the same journey that she's currently on, and the processes that she is following. If you're an existing business and you want to expand or grow, you know, you're already in business, so we need to look at what is it going to cost to get you to expand that business and to maintain what you currently have. So everyone's at a different phase. So wherever you're at, assessing where you are, where you want to go, whether you want to launch or whether you want to grow, we need to look at what are the resources that you're going to need to make that happen. And so we would encourage you to check out, you know, consider the resource plan. And there is a, within your participant guide, there are some worksheets that you can work through. And so you'll want to check out those great resources, and that can what some do. And so, and one final word about Sophia is that as you're looking at the worksheets in the participant guide, you're going to have sections for space and equipment and supplies similar to what she did. You're going to look, there's a section dedicated to skill development, staff and personnel needs, and other resources. So when you look at staff and personnel, you know, we want to think about what if you're going to need to hire someone, and then also, you know, in addition to salary, what if any benefits that might be available to that person. So you'll want to do some budgeting, not only for their salary, but if there's any benefits, and you also want to budget to cover their payroll related taxes. And so that planning worksheet gives you some information to work through those great resources, and that will help you kind of dig through and work through all that information. So as you think about, a note about the living expenses as well, I would want you to not include those in your resource plan. And so, because when you talk to the lender is going to want to know what's needed to get this business up and going. And so their focus is on business, not necessarily live. So if you need covering living expenses, if you want, the banker is going to be more interested in understanding what are the resources, what is needed to support the business. And so, so with that, the expectation is that your living expenses would be covered by another source. It could be you keep a job, either a full-time job or a part-time job. It could be that you have a family member that's willing to cover some living expenses. It could be that you have a partner. So there are some other ways, but you'll want to think about, my recommendation would be to do an individual budget going, and then you have the resource plan that you're creating specific to your business. And so having those two things together gives you the peace of mind to know, okay, I know what it costs me to maintain my household, but also at the same time, while you're developing your resource plan, you know what it's going to take to get that business up and going or to expand your business. And then, you know, what resources are going to be needed for that. And so that's just a suggestion that I would make, and, you know, is to consider doing that personal household budget in addition to the resource plan. So, So some resource planning ideas, and this is really meant to help to, as a way to think through some of the issues related to that, to the what you're going to need, like whether it's a location, how you're going to inventory, what type of personnel you need. So it's kind of walking through the day-to-day operational issues of a business. What is it going to take for this business to function? Do we need that location? Do we need staff? And so it's really taking that information and really starting to take that idea that was on the back of that napkin and really say, these are the resources that we need to support this. So this is going to take there's several approaches you can take to doing this type of research. You can interview folks, you can interview other stakeholders, you can talk to competitors, and my suggestion you're in, but they are far enough away from you that they're not going to consider you a direct threat to them. And so from my experience, a lot of times folks are very happy to talk to someone else about their business because they've worn their family members out talking about business. So their friends and family are like, oh my goodness, if they mention that one more time, someone else who is you found your tribe. And so if you find someone who is in that same industry as you guys have a lot in common to begin with because you're both drawn to that industry. So that person who could be a competitor could give you some really great insight. They could give you ideas about, oh my gosh, you want to avoid this vendor, or this is the best supplier to use. So they could give you some ideas about, some insight that only someone in business would have because they have that benefit of experience. So my suggestion is this that takes a lot of what I call prime research, because you're going out, you're talking to people, you're interviewing them, you're gathering information. Sure, you can look at books and you can do some of this research from a secondary source, but really capturing that information firsthand from someone is really powerful. But as you think about that, yeah, this is a little bit of homework that you'll be doing, but I think you're going to find it because really let it to look at what it's going to take, and I think it's going to energize you in the process as you continue to evolve and it grows. And so those are some ideas around resource planning and ways to go about it. So as you go through this process, you're gathering information. I kind of equate this to that discovery phase that you're going through. You're gathering all of this information. You've moved from the idea on the back of the napkin. You've got an idea of what it's going to take to get this up and going. So you're almost ready to transition into a business plan. Resource planning, you're really developing a business plan at this point because you've done all of this research. You've identified costs, expenses. You're gathering a lot of information, got good information from competitors. So it's very natural that you would springboard on into the business plan. And so when you think about that business plan, what I would like to say is that business plan tells a story. So it tells a story about your business. It speaks on your behalf when you're not there to talk about your business and to talk about your ideas. And really, because it conveys the idea that you have, it tells the story of what you're going to do. To a lender, and you meet them one time, you talk about what you want to do. If you give them that business plan and they spend some time reading it, they're going to have a pretty good idea who you are, what you're wanting to do, and how you're going to accomplish it. And so, and it also, when we talk about what is the planning horizon for a business plan, we say 3 years, and you might think 3 years is a long time. But for the first year, we look at things very precisely month to month. But that 3-year planning horizon is typically what's covered in a business plan. And it really helps you outline, the business, not only just that narrative piece, but also the financial component, what it's going to take to bring that business to reality. And then the sources of financial support too that you might be seeking. And so, and it can take time to write a plan. As you've seen with Sophia's example, She worked on step one, the back of the napkin, moved into resource planning. So as we looked at her 2-year planning process, she was several months into it before she got to this stage of doing the business plan. So what we'll do is we're going to get an update on Sophia, and we're going to talk about what's happening in that. And so she completed that resource plan. It really helped her refine her idea. So we know that she decided that, she discovered that she needed more money to start and operate the business than the first guesstimate. And that often happens. And it is okay to start with those estimates. But as you see, as she went through the planning process, that she definitely fine-tuned those guesstimates, became hard numbers. And then she's like, you know what, it's going to take a little bit more money than I realized to get this up and going, which is fine because she arrived at that in an informed way. And so as part of her process, conversations with folks, was a bank officer, and she talked to the bank officer about getting a loan. And as they met with her and evaluated the situation, they suggested that she look at her personal credit score. And they said, we're going to recommend that you raise your personal credit score. And so being that strong, self-disciplined person, we know that's a strength that Sophia has. So she was determined that she was going to, what can I do to help my personal credit? And so she decided, I'm going to reduce credit card debt. And so she was very determined to make those improvements. The loan officer further encouraged her to write that business plan, to fine tune those ideas, and to get ready and be ready to launch as she goes through that process of strengthening her personal credit. And they to buy, I wanted to have a condo that has some equity in it, but they wanted her to start thinking about moving to the direction of getting funded. So we're looking at credit, we've looked at collateral, we've looked at how much capital she needs to put into it. So they've really helped her think through what's going to be needed to get a loan. And so she went to her stakeholders, her family members, and she talked to her kids, and everyone was very supportive. And much, we're going to not buy new clothes. We're going to, a family member took a part-time job, so they got a cheaper cell phone plan. So everyone made collective sacrifices in support of what she is doing. And so this took about a year. So about within a year, Sophia was able to pay off that credit card and put money into her savings. So instead of paying on it after she got those cards paid off, she was now able to start funding some of her. And so through this process, because we know this took some time for all this to happen, she kept working on that business plan. She kept refining the idea. She did a couple of drafts of a business plan. And then she decided, she took those classes that we talked about earlier. She spent some time with the Women's Business Center. And so when she finally developed that plan, went through several drafts of the business plan, then she started sharing it with family members and some extended family members and friends. And so they really were impressed. She had the big family friends and started. And so that's really, an awesome support system that she was able to, that supported her. They believed in her idea. She had a compelling business plan that told her story. She did all that research. She sacrificed, she saved, she was scrappy. And they saw that. They saw that this is a person who's dedicated. Look at what she's done. And so they decided to put money into the opening of her business. And so as you think, that's her journey on the business plan. And that's where that is the path that she took. So when you look at the participants guide, pages 13 and 14, I did like that business plan outline that they provided. And what that was, it was adoption that was provided I would tell you, if you go to score.org or sba.gov, there are a lot of templates and excellent examples of resources on business plans. So tap into your technical assistance providers, the Women's Business Center, Small Business Development Center, SCORE, great resources. And so a lot of great information online. And as I mentioned prior, I'm that person who's going to tell you all of the low-cost bootstrap methods I know of to get great information at little or no cost. And so those are some great resources. And I would also mention to you, you know, we have a wonderful research. And so you might schedule some time with them to look at some resources that they have as well. And so, so as we look at this, the key thing is you're going through this planning process, you're doing some research, and that this is about your business in particular. So there might be a temptation. There's all kinds of sample business plans online, and don't copy someone else's plan. And I don't mean that in any disingenuous way. What I'm saying is the journey that you go through, that look at Sophia, what she did, that journey in and of itself, gathering that information, you know exactly what it's going to take to get this up. So, you know, arming that information. When you look at a sample business plan or someone else's plan, that was it's maybe different. So I think that, you know, there are some benefits to looking at those to see how approaches other people take to develop a plan. But at the end of the day, own your plan, because that's your plan and you take ownership of that. And so just know that a lot of great resources that are available to you. So just check those out, spend some time looking at those, and let that be a, you know, help you on your journey to do a business plan. We mentioned with Sophia, her journey ended with a family member, and kind of her close support system helped her get sources of financial support. When we think about that, you know, immediately when we think about funding a business, you know, a bank comes to mind. So, you know, in Sophia's example, I'm going to say she did a little bit of crowdsourcing, because, you know, that was her support system, her family members, her friends that helped, you know, that helped rally around her. So in addition to banks, there are other sources of loans of funding as well. And so page 15 of the participant guide does give you some ideas about additional sources of capital that you may want to check out, but everything does start with that plan. And so whether it's a back of a napkin or you do the full-blown business plan, you know, it's great to know, you know, the direction that you're heading and to be strategic about it. And so, so we want you to think about the future, plan for the future, and, you know, assess where you're at right now. So in being strategic, what we want you to think about is that, you know, it's just to know that everything that affects your business is going to change. When you're, you know, in business, it's a dynamic market. It's not static. Things change. New competitors enter the market, customers come and go, vendors come and go. You know, just look how much COVID has changed our current business environment for a lot of different industries. So things happen. And so the challenge is, you know, as these things happen, to have that planning process and to go through and see, you know, what are the areas of weakness or what are the challenges facing your business, and then what are some steps and action plan that you need to put in place to help you weather the storm. And so, so that would be, you know, something to think about in terms of moving from that business plan to kind of doing that ongoing survey of your environment, you know, kind of looking at what's happening around you, and to have that, you know, have that desire to create that action plan to help you stay strategic. Because when working with small businesses, my suggestion to them, you know, we do the business plan, they have a great document, it's a living document. As your business is living, as it is growing, as it is evolving, as it is changing. My recommendation is, you know, at least on an annual basis, we definitely need to reevaluate your market and what's happening. you know, the market changes, technology's changing and advancing so rapidly. We want to look at that. We want to look, have there been any shifts with your customers? What about the competitive landscape? What about your industry? So we want to do that kind of scan to see what's going on. And then we want to take that information and come up with some strategies. And so we want to look to see, do we need to position your business to respond to those changes? That could be opportunity that you could respond to some of the challenges coming down the pike. So, you know, by going through that planning process, kind of that continual planning process, it really on. And so we go back to our friend Sophia and look at what's happened with her. You know, she's been in business for a while and she's got great customers and she's, you know, meeting her financial obligations, you know, meeting her rent, utilities. And so things are going really well for her. And so she's been able also to pay herself for her time. So things are going really great for Sophia. And so what she wants to do is she now wants to think about, maybe I'm ready to make some changes with my business. So she wants to start, and she wants to achieve, you know, an average monthly customer count of 500 within 3 months. And so she takes that goal and she's going to break it down into what are the tasks that are required, how is she going to define success? And then, you know, what time frame is she going to assign for this? And then finally, what resources are needed to support what she's doing? And so you can see for Sophia, you know, that business plan has been completed. She's launched, she's doing well, but that planning hasn't stopped. So she's continuing to look at her business to find ways to strengthen it. And so as she's doing that, she's using those SMART goals, you know, where they're specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, they're realistic, and they're relevant to what she's doing and they're time-based. So that's kind of the approach that she's going to take throughout that process. And so from there, you know, she's able to look at that and to grow, you know, her business in a way that really works for her and that is achievable for her. So with that, you know, so that's how the approach that she's going to take with the planning for those SMART goals. And so looking at the steps that she's taken and looking at, you know, her progression and moving into creating that action plan and the SMART goals. When we look back at your participant guide, page 17 of that gives you some great information, and it gives you an action plan template that you could follow as well, and that can help you break down your goals and objectives into, you know, creating that SMART system that she followed to help her with her goal attainment. And so, as we mentioned, you know, celebrating the success of Sophia, you know, that planning process, you know, it was a 2-year journey. It really was. And so we went through the 4 steps all the way from that back of that napkin all the way to her action plan, where she's growing that customer base and she's looking at improving her rent cost. So you can see, you know, that through the journey, she evolved, she grew, she asked questions, and as she did that, her concept evolved, and it changed in a good way based upon all that research and information she gathered. And so really and truly, you know, her process would differ from anyone else's. You know, everyone has their own unique planning process, but the key thing would be a plan, you know, and whether or, you know, wherever you're at on the journey, is to be encouraged to try and do that planning. And so so we would want you just to think about that, the benefits of it, and just looking at her and the great things that happened as a result of her planning. And so we just want you to be encouraged by that and to know that you too can do those things and achieve those things. And so as we think about the benefits of planning versus the risk of not planning, really with planning, you kind of know where you're going. You know, you know what's ahead of you. It helps you in your decision-making process. And then you can look at the risk of not planning as well to see what happens there. And so I feel like that planning, as we mentioned and illustrated with with Sophia's example, it's a lifelong journey when you're in business. And so my beginning, and regardless of that, on the journey to consider taking a step towards coming up with some sort of a plan for the business. And so, so kind of to, you know, just to kind of summarize, you know, what we've talked about tonight, and, you know, just open it up to questions. And again, just to share with you, you know, you have the participant guides that were emailed to you, you know, and I'll open it up to see if there is any questions on the chat. So I see that we've had some Wi-Fi issues. So, okay. So it looks like you guys, I'm not seeing any questions coming through. Just want to say we're going to follow back up with you. We're going to send you some information. One thing is going to be those local resources I mentioned early on. The second is going to be just kind of save the date. If you want to continue the journey, the next thing we're going to talk about is banking services for small business. So our next date for that is going to be on Tuesday, January the 19th. We're going to ask for evaluation and feedback. We want to, you know, get your feedback and some just information, insight from you. So well, feedback we will. And just, you know, I want to thank you so much for, you know, joining us tonight, and just again looking ahead, banking services that are available for small business will be our next module. And I want to thank Community Trust Bank for making this possible, and thank you guys for being here with us this evening. We appreciate that so much, and look forward to our next session with you, and hope you have a great evening.
Thank you, Shawn.